Welcome to today's conversation on the Awakening Her podcast. I am so excited. Guys, I have the worm queen here. It sounds a little funny, but first of all, I just want to share a little bit about how I came to meet the worm queen, Kim Rogers. I was I was on the internet one day, just happened to be, following some of my peers in the speaking and coaching and wellness space, and everyone started to take this tincture and started to post photos of parasites that came out of a place that we're not going to mention right now. And I was like, whoa, this is graphic, but also a lean in of curiosity of like, what exactly is going on here? What's this all about? And then I started following Kim Rogers, and I love how you geek out on this stuff. And I also love that it's something that we all have, which I really want to dive into. And I've taken the Purify kit. I mean, I could talk for days, but let's properly introduce you. Thank you so much for being here. Everyone, please welcome the worm queen, Kim Rogers, to the show.
Thank you.
So I would love to hear, I'd love to learn a little bit about how you got into, helping people with their health. And yeah, tell us a little bit about your story of how you got into this work.
So I've been in Western medicine since 2004. I have 2 healthcare degrees. I worked in healthcare colleges. I ran 25 of them across the country. I authored books. I worked in the field. I love medicine. And in around 2015, my own health started to slowly decline, and I couldn't get any help. And then in 2019, I basically was getting ready to my affairs in order. My husband and I decided to leave our life and go out to our recreational property, build a log home, and heal me, or he would, have no mortgage and no debt if something happened to me, which is what we were prepared for. We'd gone through the grieving process of it. We knew it was declining rapidly. And so we couldn't get anyone to help us. So we went out to the property and we did a lot of mushrooms. We just hung out, right? There's so many, like, we learned how to grow them, so then we have them readily available, and I just needed to figure out what was wrong with me. And sometimes you just have to turn really inward to figure that out. And so I decided to get off all of my big pharma medications and start this journey of whatever it looked like. And so at the end of 2020, I had gotten off of a lot of my pharma meds, and then I got off of my Klonopin a little too fast because I was on Klonopin for 22 years. And then, which just, by the way, when you're on all of those pharma medications, it really does change your frequency. And so I wasn't able to tune into myself and figure out what was going on. So fast forward a few more months and I'm doing better. The mushrooms are helping a lot. I took functional and psychedelics, and I'm doing better. Like, I'm doing better, but I can't lose weight. I'm still in some pain. And so I turn on TikTok and this video comes up and this girl goes, "I almost unalived myself over worms. Are you kidding me?" And I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Like, I thought I had worms a few years before. My doctors all told me, no, that's impossible. I've had surgeries where I've watched the videos and I'm like, gosh, that looks like a worm. Like, always told I was crazy. And of course, I'm from Western medicine. This isn't a thing in this first world country that we live in. Okay. So I do the Paragard. It ripped my gut up. That's why I created my own. But I did the Paragard in 3 days. I saw flukes, pinworms, roundworm, and then eventually I found out that I had Cryptosporidium parvium, which is parvo, which kills puppies, which is a water parasite as well. So I found out we had worms in our water.
Oh, wow.
My husband had parasites. I had parasites. And then I went viral on TikTok, and here we are.
Wow. So this is really interesting because I feel like what I heard a lot before getting introduced to you and your work and your products is a lot of people are like, oh yeah, like unless you're in a foreign country and you're drinking their water or you're doing XYZ, you don't have worms. And then, you start to look at your videos on Instagram, and TikTok and you're like, holy smokes, like so many people have worms. So what were, first of all, you said something, you said calorican, like what is that? Like tell us a little bit about what some of the symptoms were that you had. And I'd love to hear what were the symptoms, what was actually showing up for you and yeah, how did this shift that for you? What was the timeline of shifting?
Well, to touch on what you said about the water, my water, I live in the United States and our water's contaminated. I live in Seattle and our water's contaminated. I've tested our water in 75% of the country and it's contaminated with nematodes. We don't test for nematodes, we test for parasites in our country.
What's name?
Nematodes is a physical worm.
Oh my God.
So when they say to boil your water, it's because like a pipe broke. And so they're afraid that the bacteria and the parasites of Cryptosporidium parvium and Defragilis and Giardia. Everybody has heard the word Giardia before. That's a waterborne, water-based type of parasite, but we don't test for physical worms. And roundworm larvae was found in my water in Hoodsport, Washington, and in Seattle. So I've tested my water anywhere I go. I use a filter, but I also test it wherever I live. I live in an apartment, so I can't always have every single thing filtered. But on my house, I have everything filtered. So my thing when I like shock people, I think, is that you wouldn't drink Mexico's water. Don't drink your water either. Because like at least Mexico gives their people options of synthetic medications to take because they know that it's not great. And then I wasn't drinking my water. I was bathing in it. I was brushing my teeth with it and I was washing my produce with it. So I was drinking out of reverse osmosis. So we would have been a lot sicker. But Crypto and Defragilis and Giardia, those are microscopic parasites that can wreak really bad havoc in your body, which is what was happening to me. They can actually shut your organs down after a period of time.
Wow. So what were some of the symptoms that you were experiencing? Because I didn't know that your story was that extreme. I saw, hey, my face was puffy. Like I've seen some of the before and after pictures. I'm like, oh, she had a puffy face, low energy, that type of stuff. But what were like, yeah, like tell us a little bit, what were the symptoms that you were experiencing and you thought that you were going to pass away? Like that's really scary.
Yeah, it is. It's really scary. And I do believe that the pictures are great to help people realize that we are in a medical awakening where people are realizing that we have to kind of step up our game. For me, particularly, my symptoms were grinding of the teeth. I had TMJ. That was a really big symptom that a lot of people don't realize. My skin, which I have really great skin, did not look like this. I had terrible breakouts that would never go away. I had like sores on my face that would never go away. I couldn't lose any weight and I didn't poop for a month. And that was a really big one because I also had endometriosis and I had a hysterectomy when I was 29. I'm 46 now. So I had a hysterectomy. I had 5 surgeries, a hysterectomy, and 5 surgeries after. And that's really why my health was declining so rapidly. And now I know that it wasn't just endometriosis. I had parasites. I have Lyme and I was living in mold and didn't know it. So it really was just like my root starting point to figure out what else was wrong with my body because it's hard to get doctors to relate to you.
Yeah. What I love about this story, an earlier episode, that I did actually was on the language of the soul. Like a huge thing that helped me on my healing journey over a decade ago is actually learning more of the spiritual space of what's going on internally, what life changes I needed to make. And then there's like the actual physical body detoxing and so many other things. And then there's, the medical system where sometimes we do need it to prevent us from dying or an emergency or surgery, all of those things. But the cool thing about this is there's different pieces of the puzzle. And I really love that you're sharing, no one knew what was wrong and you were kind of left to hang by yourself and you turned your traumatic experience, I'm labeling it as a traumatic experience.
It was traumatic. It really was. I still go to like therapy for it. So yeah.
You turned your trauma into a gift. And that's like one of the biggest messages that I share in my book and, with the work that I do. It's like you had this rock bottom moment and you're you created these like this amazing company and all of this education for people. And I helped so many people on their healing journey that you wouldn't have got there if you didn't get sick. So isn't that like such a powerful gift?
It is. It was very powerful. And the moment I knew when I started going viral, 1 million people in 2 hours watched my video that I made. And it was just a very funny, off the cuff, like, I've been in Western medicine since for 18 years and I've never dewormed myself until now. And like, I just went into detail, for 60 seconds.
Yeah.
And there was this overwhelming, like it gives me goosebumps, an overwhelming need for information. And I have that information. And so in those moments, I was still so very sick, but I was like, oh my God, this is my community. And you have to have community when you're trying to heal, and not just physically, but mentally. I was going through a lot of trauma. I had medical abandonment because they literally abandoned me in the midst of all of this, not wanting to assist me any further on, okay, you can't have any more surgeries. You're getting off your big pharma meds. What are we going to do with you then? Like, it was really a lot. There was a lot going on. And so just to have like a moment where I went viral over something, one, I can help people with, and people needed that help in 2021, especially because everyone had just gone through 2020. They were still in like a lockdown scenario and everyone was exhausted from 2020. And it was like, take your body back, and that's really what I was trying to like convey to people, is that these herbs can help you, enlighten you. They can spiritually release you in a lot of ways. Like, I feel, because parasites aren't just a physical, they're a spiritual as well. And I feel like doing the mushrooms really helped me dig so far into myself that I realized I needed to cleanse, that something was energetically attached to me. There's a frequency to the parasites. And once I figured out what that frequency was, I was able to find that the herb, and some of our herbs that we are foraged, and they are from my area. Like, I live on the outskirts of a rainforest. That's where my log home is in Washington. And I actually have multiple herbs that I would sit with while I was taking my journeys.
I love this. And it's so interesting. The first thing I thought of is I thought of myself for a moment for a couple different reasons. But the energetic piece is interesting because a lot of the time I've heard and I've felt this at different points in my life, like I'm doing all the things I need to do, but for some reason I feel like there's this energetic weight. And sometimes I'm trained in like the Akashic records. I'm very intuitive. I can see things on people and people's bodies. I woke up to being a medical intuitive years ago, but I don't practice that because that's just not what I'm doing as far as my business offering, but I can see things in people's bodies. And there are attachments and energies outside of us, and actually cleaning our physical space is important, our energetic field, keeping our body right, but also actively cleaning house. And I feel like that's what you do. You clean the house because there's so much happening in the unseen world that's impacting our body. And it's so beautiful that you've discovered this. And even that statistic around the water's contaminated in, the US. Like, I'm in Canada and I'm like, oh my gosh, what type of filters do we use? Like,
Well, I use 5 micron or smaller filters. I use so we have a 3 filter system that has a UV light on our house. It's called Blue Onyx. But then in our apartments, in our apartment, we have like a filter that goes on the shower, and it's a 5 micron. So if you just type in 5 micron shower filter, a bunch of filters will come up. I like ones that have the filter with the minerals in it, because when you strip everything, you're going to dry your skin out and your hair.
okay.
So what we did is we have like a 5 micron one, and then we have like the Julie or the Julia or the Aqua Bliss. They do add back. So because nematodes are 40 micron, that's a physical worm, is a nematode. You can't always see them in the water, but I did. I saw them in the water and I stopped. Okay, this is so funny because this all happened in July of 21. And then in August, I started intuitively feeling it was in our water. And I saw something in the water. And I lived in a travel trailer while building a log home on our property. And I literally saw something floating. And I thought, oh, it's just we're in a travel trailer. Like, but when you're in a trailer, like the toilet's right in front of your face, right? So I saw something. And then I quit using the bidet because I saw something. And I told my husband, I'm like, I think it's in our water. Like, I think something's going on with our water. And he's like, no, they test, yada, yada. So he's still using the bidet, just shooting worm water up his butt. Like, literally, it's just. And then in October, November is when we figured out it was in the water because I tested it. And then I was like, oh, I quit using that bidet. And he tested positive for physical. And I did not test positive for physical worms. But I'm like, it's because you kept using the bidet, Jeremy.
That's so funny. And it's so interesting because it's like your intuition is saying something's not right here. And I think that a lot of people who are going through a health crisis, like I've gone through a few different health crises in my journey. There's been times where I'm like, no, something's wrong here, but the doctors are like, you're fine, you know, this and that. And it could be that you have parasites. So what are some of the symptoms? I mean, I know everyone has parasites. We've talked about this before, or you've talked about it. I feel like we've had many conversations from our connection on social media, but really it's just you talking to me and being like, yeah, Kim, that's right. How do we know if we like what are some of the symptoms of having parasites that you know, I'm like, shoot, maybe I need to do a cleanse.
Well, we all should be doing a cleanse 3 to 4 times a year with or without symptoms because we're exposed on a daily basis. It's in our fish, it's in our food. Like RFK Jr., who is going to run our health services here in our country, he had a tapeworm in his brain from undercooked pork. So it's very easy to catch worms. And they say like 3 out of 5 people have a tapeworm. They say 95% of the people have parasites. And the reason why they don't have accurate statistics is because we don't have accurate testing. And so you can't, like, I got tested by an independent lab that took it and sent it to Mexico. So Mexico counted my number as theirs because I tested positive, but the United States doesn't because it's not in their Western medicine lab. So I'm not counted as a number, neither is my husband. So really the numbers are skewed because there isn't accurate testing in our country for parasites, which it really should be. It's not that difficult. But some of the symptoms that really people should look at, not just grinding of the teeth or skin issues, but also things like IBS, eczema, psoriasis, because it's your gut. Your gut is your first brain. They say your gut is your second, but in my experience from all of this, the moment I started getting my gut cleaned up by removing the parasites, when I did those cleanses, everything changed for me. Like I started trusting myself. I've always had a good intuition and I've always had the medical, like what you were saying, you can see people. That's why I'm in the field because I literally help people and not even need to do any tests with them. But I didn't trust it. And so when I started cleansing, I started trusting my instincts. I started going with it in a positive love and light versus like dark and dreary because they hold that energy. They hold an energy. I actually had no contact with my family for 7 years. And since cleansing, I've been in contact with my family. I talk with my mom every day now, and we're actually thinking of moving closer to them again. So it just shows you how much when you have environmental toxins in your body weighting you down, how much it can change your personality, give you anxiety. They hold trauma. They can hold 6 times their weight in heavy metals, spores, viruses, and bacteria.
Wow.
So, and once you release those, and that's what's great about our kit is we're literally not just releasing the parasites, we're also having you release the overall viruses and bacteria. And the problem is a lot of these cleanses that are out there, they don't have another herb to sweep that in and out. right? So they're not telling you to bind. And when you take a synthetic from the doctors, they're not having you bind, and viruses are being let out. So what I did is I realized what the frequency of each one of these issues is, and I brought the herb to the table. And it's like an opera singer singing, and her voice is the same frequency as a glass, so it breaks the glass. That's what I did with herbs. I figured out that Oregon grapefruit is for small intestinal parasites with peppermint. And so I also realized that they're going to release all these viruses and bacteria. And so usnea comes in. I also realized that when you're cleansing, you're hungry because they're hungry and you're feeding them. So you're trying to not feed them. So you need something like usnea to come in and curb your appetite. I realized that heavy metals are held by them. And I wanted to bring in a heavy metal detox because you're already feeling like trash. You might as well bring it all in and do it all at once and start fresh and get a reset. So, and your liver is taxed because I had liver flukes, but your liver's taxed because it's the last pathway before going to the bathroom. So it's your last filter system. So you got to boost it. So while I was going through all of this, adding more and more on, first off, it was like $250 and it was crazy expensive. And I was literally the poorest person you could ever meet because we had gone down to nothing when I got sick. We had like $10,000 we lived off of for 2 years. So I didn't have $250. I didn't even have $100. Luckily, I went viral and some companies sent me some things, but I'm like, most chronically ill people are sick. So who can afford to do this? And Cellcore is like $700. So all of these things were unobtainable, and not knowing how the herbs work, just throwing in wormwood and black walnut hull is only going to screw you up, because I did that and it messed me all up. So of course I'm not going to talk about do that. And then, so it was like this perfect storm of understanding how frequencies helped me, understanding how ailments have frequencies, understanding what herbs, and having them talk to me while I'm out there chilling in my, land. And so it kind of changed everything with parasite cleansing as well. But when you go back to asking what your symptoms are, honestly, since we all do have some form of a parasite, any additional symptoms that you have that you're just not normal is really, and feeling like trash every day is not normal. And we don't have to feel like that every day.
I love that I can just see you out with the herbs and be like, oh, this one's talking to me. Oh, this one's talking to me. And it's so, I can see it, I can relate to it. And I love your connection with the company. I'm very selective of any supplements that I take. I'm very energetically tuned in. And when I received my first, I think I've done 2, maybe 3 cleanses. No, I think I've done 2 cleanses with you so far. And I love the feeling of it. They don't even taste bad. The tinctures don't even taste bad. And I've done tinctures before where like my whole body is like, like trying to get rid of it right away. This, put in water 3 times a day. Yeah, you're doing it right now. It doesn't taste like anything. It tastes like nothing.
Yeah.
And I didn't have many symptoms. And I don't know if that's because I live a pretty clean detox life, but there were a couple of days, within the month, where I had a migraine or a headache, just a couple of days, not a lot. And the most interesting part for me was this, okay? This is where it gets wild with the detox, okay? I started smelling chemicals coming out of my body. Like I could smell them coming out of my skin, and I'm like, it was like a detergent, or it was like a some sort of I could smell these chemicals coming out of my body. And then I could also it was almost like it's hard to describe. It was almost like, when you're there's a sewer or something, or you drive by a garbage bin and it's just oh, I would get whiffs of those smells coming out of my pores. And I shower twice a day. I'm a clean freak, but I was like, there's some shit going on internally. And good thing there's the binders, because then it's leaving my body versus staying in it. But the smells of the toxins, I was like, oh, that smells like plastic. That smells like a child. It's
Plastic.
plastic. And one of them smelled like a childhood doll or something. Like it was like some sort of like I was like, this smells like something that I might have played with as a child. Like it was really weird. Has it ever happened to you? Like,
Yeah. The smells. It's crazy because our bodies are pushing them out of our skin, which is our biggest organ. 70% of our, it's our biggest organ. And it's pushing it out to the best of its ability because it is trying to get it out. It's doing its job. Our body is doing its job by trying to get it out of the body, continue to protect the body in order for it to protect your soul. And so it's literally doing everything it can to keep pushing it all out. And I think that what's so hard is that, we can't see a lot of the things that are in our body. And so it's hard to understand that like this stuff is in our cells, it's in our blood, it's in our plasma. I actually just have been doing therapeutic plasma exchange. So I actually have been able to see what my plasma looks like over the last 3 weeks that's being removed, cleaned, and then my blood put back in. I get to see some of what's gone on in my body. And I think if people were able to see what's internal, the smells would make more sense, right? Because it's literally pushing them out of our cells. So parasites and mold and toxins are not just in our gut, they're in our blood, our tissue, and our muscle. And so that's kind of what your body is like, oh, it's getting in, it's got some energy to push the plastics out that we've drank, to push the chemicals out that we've put and absorbed into the muscle, that it's stored in there. Just like trauma is stored in muscle and it has muscle memory, so are smells and chemicals.
yeah, I feel like so yesterday. Okay, this is another thing that happened when I was on the Parify cleanse last time. I was in Costco and I was grocery shopping and I passed this. Yes, I passed mini eggs. And mini eggs were used to be my weakness. Okay, chocolate.
Green ones. Oh yeah, those are good.
I really like chocolate. It's always been a thing. And so I'm like passing them. There's a big bag and I pass it and I put it in my cart and I'm going around and I'm like, as I'm going around grocery shopping, and in Costco for a while, I'm like, that wasn't me that picked up the bag. It was some parasites. And I was on the cleanse and I was probably like day, like, I don't know, like 15 or 20, right? So I'm like in it. And it was the last time I did it. And then I like, as I was going to check out, like on the way back, I'm like, parasites aren't going to win this one. I like put it in the cart and then I got a sugar-free healthy snack instead. I was like, I won. And that happened a couple times where I'd like be at a store and check out, you know how the lines have the chocolate and all the things. And I'd be like, no, no. And it's interesting because last night I had some mini eggs and I haven't had chocolate or sweets in a while. And I'm like, I need to. And it's one of the things I'm like, I need to order a Parify kit like this week because it's gonna take a little bit to get here. I'm like, I need to do it. But that's one of the things where I'm like, okay, like the parasites are talking.
Well, and the full moon was on Monday. So they're in full swing right now. They just like reproducing in your body actively.
Yeah. So we can actually get parasites from, what are all of the things we get parasites from? Because I know you've shared it before on your, on your platform. I'd love for the listeners to know all of the different ways that parasites are entering our bodies.
So pets, and I get a lot of hate for this, and I had dogs. My dogs had worms. I had the same worms as my dogs. So pets, we love them. We let them lick us. They lay in our bed. We clean up after them. They're microscopic normally at the beginning. The worms' eggs are microscopic, so it's not like you're going to see this big Cadbury egg. You're not going to see anything. So usually fish, all fish are contaminated. I live in Seattle and I've talked to the pike market people. They're the world famous pike market that they throw fish and
I love that. It's so fun.
yeah. They're so fun. I went down there and I told them who I was and they laughed at me that they're like, what do you mean people don't know that there's parasites in fish? And I'm like, right. That's what I'm saying too. And they're like, but we should be like deworming. And I'm like, yeah, you don't deworm. They're like, no. They said that closer to the belly of the fish is more parasites and then further out. And then they also said that about this big, which is, I don't know, like a square inch, is approximately 10,000 eggs can live in a square inch of salmon.
Wow.
So, I mean, they live in the water, and the water isn't just contaminated, but it also, that's where it all lives. So lakes, rivers. I don't know if you've ever watched one of my videos where there's bears that have tapeworms coming out when they're, yeah, they eat better salmon than us, and they got that. So it's like, think about it. They're on the ground, right? Because dirt. So I'm not saying not to ground, and that's another thing people get mad at me about. I am saying, though, find a little area in your yard that your dog's not going to the bathroom there, that other animals aren't going to the bathroom. Keep that area cleaned up. Put diatomaceous earth so it gets rid of any physical eggs that are in or any physical worms, and then ground there. Because if you are grounding, I was on a podcast with Sean Kelly and I told him this, and he goes, oh, so like my dogs are pooping everywhere and I'm walking around grounding and I cleaned up after them. I'm like, right, but the rain comes in, clears their stool, the stool goes down into the earth, and then worms come up like hookworm. And then you walk in that area, they grab onto your feet, and then they embed into your body. Like there's 125,000 pores in the bottom of each of your feet.
Yeah, it's like one of the best places for detoxing is through your feet and absorbing through your feet. So
fulvic.
okay.
I come out. Did you see my video of worms swam out of my feet in the fulvic?
I didn't see that, but when I had a bath with it, like when I was on my last cleanse, I had a bath with the fulvic soak in. I just noticed like it was almost, yeah, like little spirals. It almost looked like you know how Cheetos look really soft? Like the Cheeto chips. It was like kind of like that. I'm like, oh, did I get some weird stuff in here? And then I was like, no, I think that's a worm, but it looked like it was fluffy. Like it didn't look like a worm. It looked like a fluff thing.
Right. They're like thread worms. It can be a spirochete because things embed into our muscle and our tissue, and then they start to multiply. And I had one and I had it swim. That's what made me go so viral. I went viral over the cleanse itself, but then I did a fulvic foot soak and it swam, and I have it on video swimming. And so things were floating, and I showed people. So people like receipts. And so I'm like, all right, you want to see everything? I'm going to show you everything. So, but yeah, those are they're like a thread worm or a spirochete, but they're just starting. And the way that I think people think worms are just like this, right? But really they start out in a clump, and then they start to branch out as they're developing, and they get out of the clump. Like their clubhouse is like a square of them, and then they start to form and they start to like create their own homes. And then during the full moon, especially, they then eat your serotonin and swim out through your body. And the serotonin is like a river for them. They can just hop in and swim anywhere and then create more clumps of homes and then keep reproducing. And they really can produce a lot. My best friend is Sam Bruno. She's like the most health conscious, does not eat anything terrible ever. She's so fit, it's crazy. And she blew 100 worms out her nose. And last night we were on the phone and she goes, oh my God, I just did a water enema, Kim. And I am gonna, she's never sent me a picture. And she sent me a picture. She has clumps of pinworms. And she is the cleanest person I know. So just because you eat healthy and you have a healthy lifestyle, they can still live in you, and they can live in you for decades. And without you going in and eradicating them and putting them on alert, you will not get rid of them. People that have had appendix issues or appendicitis usually have pinworms, and they live in that area, exploding it, getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's just the lack of knowledge from the indoctrination of Western medicine that has kind of all gotten us here. And so chronic illness for me was parasites and mold. But it can, when you ask me like what other symptoms can someone have, it can be so many and you don't even really think about it. And that's why my message always is just cleanse 3 to 4 times a year. Yeah. And if you feel better on the cleanse, then keep doing it and continue to pave the way for you to figure out what's going on with your health. Because honestly, it could just be that you have a parasite and you don't really have IBS or IBD, or eczema. It really could just be that you've got something internally fighting inside of your body, and your body doesn't know how to process those nutrients. They steal 90% of our nutrients. They're absorbing everything. That's why I chose a tincture as well, because it's readily available. It goes directly into your bloodstream. They're in our mouth. So it's kind of dual purposing. It's like in our mouth, cleansing out our mouth and absorbing into our body right away. It doesn't have to fight with the stomach acid. It doesn't have to fight with any parasites that you might have in your intestines. It actually is just going straight into the body and doing exactly what it needs to do.
Honestly, it was like one of the easiest cleanses I've ever done. I did have a couple days of die-off symptoms, like headache here and there, but I thought it was going to be a lot worse because I have done different cleanses in the past. And, you know, back in, I think it was about 5 or 6 years ago, I had no energy, really bad brain fog, a lot of funky symptoms. And I was like, something's wrong. Like, I don't know what it is, but something's super wrong. I found out through my naturopath that I had really high levels of mercury in my body, but I'm like, I don't really eat fish. And what is that from? And it was from the absorption of basically almost anything that we purchase or use from China. And I wasn't getting tested for parasites or anything, but that detox was super taxing on my hormones. I cried every day at the same time. It was like 4 o'clock came around. I was crying, couldn't control it. Just like it was a wild ride. But like the fact that I'm like, I don't eat like fish. Like I don't know why this is coming up. And so it's cool that this not only clears out these worms, but it also is for heavy metals. And then you also you know, I mean, I would love to get some pictures from you so that when this episode is out, we can actually show some of the different types of worms and all of that. When I did the cleanse, I did see some worms when I went to the washroom, and I did see some of them in my in the fulvic soap. But what I noticed is I just felt like this lightness and more clarity in my field, in my body. It was like I just felt lighter. It wasn't like a crazy change, but it was just like, it's like I can breathe. Like it's just like a weight was lifted, you know? And I have psoriasis. And I have psoriasis that flares. And I had a flare not long ago. Like I healed myself of 3 other autoimmune diseases through like more of the emotional stuff. But this comes and it goes, and there's no real like emotional, we should say, emotional reason or trigger externally that really I've been able to measure it, because I'll be clear for like 6 months and then I'll have a flare and I'm like, okay, well, what's going on? And last time I did the cleanse, my psoriasis cleared like almost right away. So anyone who's struggling with psoriasis, and I've shared this with some friends, it's really helpful. So yeah, I love what you're doing. Yeah. Amazing.
Let's touch on why your psoriasis flared. Psoriasis really heavily stems from liver. So your liver is taxed a little bit more because it's the last pathway. It's also that emotional side of the organ. So liver is like our emotions. And so when your liver's flaring, that's going to flare as well. That's why it targets when you're doing something like the steroid that they recommend you being on. They have you get liver tests because it taxes the liver the most. So that's my opinion. This is just me knowing there's like an energetic field. They are stealing energy. Yeah. So it's a heaviness. Their frequency. They have their own frequency. Literally, you can go into like ZApp or I do frequency on my account once in a while. You can go in and match their frequencies. So they have their own. It's the same with mold. Mold has its own frequency because they're alive. So we have our frequency, they have their frequency. They come in and they lower your frequency, making you feel heavy. You can do multiple things that, spiritually, energetically, by bringing in frequencies while you're cleansing. I used to not be able to listen to the frequency because I would pass so many worms and I wouldn't be able to do my job, which this isn't a job, but this is my life's work. Yeah. And I felt like when I would pass, like if I saw someone had a horsehair worm or a picture got sent to me, I would look at it and then all of a sudden I'd pass it, because that's how energetically aligned they all are with each other. So you can actually go and download. We have a parasite book. There's 600 pages. It's 2 books, and it's every picture I've collected over the last 3 years. So you can go and identify your parasite from that ebook. It's free because I mean, people send them to me, and I'm like, what am I going to do with them all? They're all on my phone. So one,
That's a whole new phone. You're getting a new phone and you're like looking through the photos.
oh, terrible. Oh my God. And it's funny because I don't even really think about it. And then I like handed my phone to someone. I'm like, oh, you can look in the pictures. There's nothing weird. And I realized that it's weird, but not weird to me because I see it all day.
Well, what I love about this too is like, on the path of spiritual awakening, which is essentially being connected to ourself, like our true self, but also the world around us. We have to clean up our body because if we don't clean up our body, we're so disconnected from the world around us and like people. And, the more I focus on my health, the more in tune I am, the happier I am, the healthier I am, the better I feel, the better decisions I make, the easier business is, the easier everything is, the more aligned we are with our physical body.
And I honestly, even though I joke about sitting and doing mushrooms, I did them every day.
Wow.
I for a year. Like I sat in and I wanted to become aligned with myself. You lose so much of who you are and you are so disconnected in the matrix that we're in, and so this helps align you. I feel like even though it wasn't my cleanse the first 3 days of the other cleanse that I did, I was like, oh my God. Like I literally stopped and I was like, oh, how did I not know about this? How did they not tell me about this? And should I have not gotten a hysterectomy? You know what I mean? Because that's a life altering surgery that I can never have children or get my uterus back. But all of those emotions went through while cleansing, but I was able to handle it better because I had a more clear mind where myself was telling me you did everything you needed to do, where you usually get into a spiral.
Mhm.
And I feel like doing all of those things and assisting me, it just really made me more grounded, which I was very much out there to, not be around anymore. So, and I came to conclusions with that. And I think that's what's so great about mushrooms. That's like a whole nother topic. Obviously, I love mushrooms. They're like everything to me. Our whole company is based on Amanita. I learned how to break Amanita down and get off of benzodiazepines because it's the same structure. So
What are benzodiazepines? What is
benzodiazepine is an anti-anxiety medication that they give. It's I took Klonopin, which is a benzo. It's a heavy anxiety med, helps people with PTSD. And basically what it does is it just pushes your nervous system. So when you start to feel fight or flight, or you start to feel anxiety, it's like, no, that frequency is not going to happen. And it just pushes it. So you never process your emotions. And then your body starts to get addicted to it. And then you start having side effects from it. And so then they, treat those side effects with more medications. And so you're just stacking it all. And so when I got started this journey, I was like, no, I got to get off everything. And then I want to learn the plants. And the plants taught me, like they showed me the way. I would think, oh, well, how am I going to do this? I would walk outside and this mushroom would pop up and everyone thinks this is poisonous, and it's not poisonous.
no.
Amanita muscaria is not poisonous.
It has to be heated though, right? That's a big.
Yeah, so you have to, I learned how to break it down into muscimol and ibotenic acid. And so I learned that the DNA structure of that is actually the same as benzodiazepine. And Big P can't take a plant and patent it, but they can patent a synthetically driven derivative of that plant. And they've done that with multiple plants that I use. They did it with Amanita. They did it with usnea. Usnea is usnic acid that they utilize to help people lose weight. So I learned this because I come from this world of pharmacy. I loved pharmacy. It was one of my favorite things. I was a certified farm tech for a while. So there's a lot of things that I just integrated Western medicine in with traditional. And then whatever this is that we're going through, the medical awakening medicine that we're in, I really feel like we're in this cool space that we've never really thought about before. Like, everyone thought this is just some poisonous mushroom, and in fact, it healed my brain when I added it in with other medicines like turkey tail and lion's mane and psychedelics and THC. All of those things allowed me as plant medicine to come in and like regain who I was.
I love what you're doing. This is so cool. It's so cool and it's so exciting. And yeah, the first thing when you Google Amanita, you will see it's poisonous. You'll die if you have it, but you actually have to have a lot of it to get sick. And I've learned a bit about it recently because it's so good for the nervous system and sleep and everything else. And but I love that. So I'd love to talk a little bit about, so basically if you're listening to this right now and you are like, I need to do a parasite cleanse, which everyone does, go to the link below. There will be all the details on how to get a kit and highly recommend that. I'm going to be getting a kit very soon as well. So maybe we can all do it together.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, so you said you had Lyme disease as well. Is it true? And have you been able to reverse that, or the symptoms are gone? Like, I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey because you mentioned mold, Lyme, heavy metals, worms. Like we've thrown a lot of symptoms and diseases out there. And I know that people that are listening might be like, oh, well, my mom has Lyme disease, or I have that, or I might. I'd love for you to share a little bit more about that.
So parasites were the start. And then I lived in a moldy travel trailer, which like 60% of the buildings in society have Aspergillus niger in them. So it really is a bigger problem than what everybody talks about. So those are two co-infections of Lyme, and I have chronic Lyme. And my levels are going down significantly because I am doing therapeutic plasma exchange. But I also take a lot of herbs like T-sol and Sustain, which is really a Lyme. And then our lymphatic kit that's coming out is also a Lyme kit, but it's for lymphatic because when you get your lymphatic going and your brain health going, you can put your Lyme into remission. And so that's what I've been doing, is really pushing my lymphatic kit. I used Lyme herbs in the lymph kit. So it's actually spelled LYM capital F. So Lyme and lymphatic put together. I like to play words. And so I really have used these herbs to assist me in putting my chronic Lyme into remission. I will always have Lyme. Like, it's just a number, a label. It's like how insurance has to define you to get paid, right? So I'll always have that. But when you get it into a level where it's in remission, then, it's undetectable. So Lyme is such a tricky thing because it literally burrows like multiple sclerosis, burrows into your body, and it's hard to detect and it's hard to kill because it creates a biofilm. And that's what's hard about all of these parasites and mold is they live in a biofilm. And so what makes our kit so great is that I use lungwort lichen, which is a foraged herb, and it breaks the biofilm. Biofilm is mucus, and they live in it, and they just surround themselves. So they literally have this hardened shell that the wormwood and Oregon grapefruit can't come in and remove them because of this hardened shell. So you have to come in and break that. And that's what Lyme is as well. It has a hardened shell. It burrows down into the muscle, and then it creates the shell around it. So it's undetectable. They're opportunists, and that hardened shell is an enter only, right? So everything is absorbing into the biofilm, feeding the parasite, but it's not, but then like wormwood and Oregon grapefruit can't break into it. So there's nutrients that can go in, but not all herbs can go in. So you have to break it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's so interesting. So, would you say that I know that you have this new line coming out specifically with the lymphatic system? Is it important for people to do lymphatic work potentially before doing a parasite cleanse? If people have issues with like their lymphatic drainage, like what are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. You have to do three P's: peeing, pooping, and perspiring. And that's your lymphatic. Your lymphatic system doesn't have a sphincter, which is like what pumps, which is such a odd design because your lymphatic is your sewer. It's the waste and it doesn't have any way of pumping it. So you have to do that. You have to, that's what massages is. That's what binding is. That's what movement, vibration plates, sweating. That's you moving your lymphatic system. And when you have stagnation, it's just going to sit. And so you really need to get your lymphatic moving prior to doing a cleanse, but it's very difficult when you don't feel well.
Yeah.
So that's why I created a lymphatic kit, because it just gives you a little bit of a push to hop on that vibration plate a little bit, to go into a sauna, to go outside and go for a walk for 5 to 10 minutes, to get it moving. And once you get it moving, things don't stay in you when it's in movement.
Mm-hmm.
And so when then you step into a parasite cleanse, your body's been prepped and you're going poop and you're going pee and you're sweating because you've got a little bit of assistance to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't imagine not being able to go to the bathroom for a month.
Oh,
That's
a
that's
month.
that's
Like,
insane.
it was hard, it was huge, and I guess part of the sad part about having endometriosis is I couldn't get pregnant, but I always looked pregnant. And so it was even worse when I wasn't pooping. I mean, it was just wild. It was just wild that my body was like, yep, I'm just going to hang on to those toxins and it's going to make you feel uncomfortable. And it's just reabsorbing back into your body. So all those toxins are just getting right back into your bloodstream. It's just like this horrible cycle that was going on in my body. And it really, like, I reached out to my doctors and they were like, yeah, there's just nothing we can do for you. And I'm like, what do you mean there's nothing you can do for me?
Wow.
So
And so with endometriosis, you feel that a lot of those symptoms are from worms. Can you share a little bit more about that? Because that's really common with women.
I believe, just from my experience that I've had, and I've been in remission for 3 years now. I used to have surgeries every 2 years, since I was around 20.
Wow.
And then I had a hysterectomy when I was 29. And I still had surgeries after my hysterectomy. At that point, I still had endometriosis. It was all over my body, my lungs, my kidneys, my liver, my bladder. They didn't believe that it could spread everywhere. And so mine was everywhere. And now all of a sudden, I don't have it at all. And I do parasite cleansing and I do mold cleansing and I boosted my body in a different way. And I don't have any problems anymore. Like none, like zero.
This is wild. And some people might be listening and think it's too good to be true. Um, but the truth is, until you actually do something fully, you won't know. And I know that there's a lot of health and wellness hacks, or, I love sauna. I just got a sauna and a cold plunge for our place. So I'm like, excited to do that every day or so. But there's a lot of little things that are big things. Like castor pack oils are so great. And, I was like, oh, that's not going to support me. And then I heard one of my friends say, actually, it was a game changer for me. And then I did it. I do it once a week and I'm like, wow, I have the best sleep. I feel so light the next day. And then it's like colonics. I was like anti colonics, anti all that stuff. I'm like, that's weird. And then I started doing it once a week. And I'm like, oh, like I actually feel like I'm releasing energy. And like
Yeah.
parasite cleansing, it's like, oh, that's not gonna work. I don't have parasites, and you do, and you're like, wow, I feel great. And it's like all of these things work, and listening to your soul and intuition, all of those little nudges, they work if you work them. And that's the cool thing about it, but you don't know until you actually know. And I know there's people listening who are like intrigued. I want to lean and I want to do it. And there's some people that are like, oh, that's not going to work. Well, try it and let us know how you feel after. You know what I mean?
Because when it's not going to hurt you,
Oh,
right? Like, and if you like castor oil packs, you should do castor oil with red light. Red
oh,
light therapy is such an underutilized therapy.
I have a light therapy machine too. So cool.
Go in and just like slather yourself in castor
Oh,
oil.
your
And
whole body?
yeah, well, I do like my neck and I do my abdominal area. Um, but the red light will penetrate the castor oil deeper. So the castor oil can only go to a certain level, and that's why you do a pack, because the heat pushes it down more. But if you don't do a pack, you do a pack, but you do a castor oil with red light, it's going to penetrate it even deeper, just red light alone. And so the red light actually is the way that it pushes it. So red light is a game changer. Like, I do it all day, every day. When I get off this, I'll grab my little red light holder thing on my way to my doctor's appointment, and I'll red light everywhere. It's the best. Like, it really is such a great modality that people don't use.
That's so great. Yeah, I have one of those and I use it once or twice a week, but I'm going to try to do it more often now. So thank you. Like, so much value. I feel like we could do a 2 or 3 hour show. We'll definitely have you back at some point.
Yeah.
More about all the things that are happening. So you have this new lymphatic kit that's going to be coming out in May. So if you're listening to the episode before then, well, go to the website, maybe get a Purify kit, try that out, go through it. And then when the lymphatic system drainage package comes out, definitely check it out. We're also doing an incredible giveaway. Kim has been so generous, and she's always so generous. We've had her be a part of events with Awakening Her, and she's just, so generous. She's giving away the ultimate Purify kit for one lucky listener who, what you have to do to qualify is you need to follow Rogers Hood on Instagram, as well as myself, Deidre Sirianni, on Instagram. And you need to share this episode on the feed. Oh, go ahead. You were going to say something.
Mrs. Rogers, Mrs. Rogers.hood.
Mrs. Rogers.
Hood, MRSROGERS.hood. That's me. Then Rogers Hood is my company, which, by the way, we manufacture our own products. We do all of our own products. So, but yes, so you want to follow Rogers Hood, Mrs. Rogers Hood, and you.
Okay, perfect. So you're going to follow the three of us. We're going to have the notes specifically in the show notes with the direct link. So you can just click. So make sure to follow those 3 accounts. And then what you need to do is you need to take a little snapshot of this episode. Maybe you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on your iPhone or Spotify. You're going to take a little snapshot and you're going to post on your story and tag us. And then within 30 days of this episode coming out, we are going to announce on Instagram the winner of the ultimate Purify kit. So thank you so much for that. That's so incredible. Like, what an amazing gift. And so as we start to wrap up the conversation, is there anything else that you really want to share with our listeners today?
Just take care of yourself. Like, don't be afraid. Everyone's here to help as well, especially on my team. You can email us, you can DM us, you can comment, and we do our best to answer every comment, every DM, and every single email.